Oops.
Let's say that you did have the ability to travel in time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather travel forward in time and then bring that information back to the present, back to your reality?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you rather travel back in time and tell everyone what's coming?
Now, I've seen every single one of these movies. No matter which direction you go in, you ruin the fate of the world somehow. No matter what you do.
Let's not
Chaos
get
theory.
into the
Okay.
House of Cards side of it. I'm talking about blowing people's minds.
Okay. Just the way Biff did in Back to the Future, I would go to the future and I would unlock all the like financial tips and I would become unbelievably rich. That's right.
All right. So you're going to go to the future, you're going to see what's coming, and then you're going to come back to us here in the now and use that to get ahead.
Yes. I'll spend 2 weeks sort of like making a strategy of how to get extraordinarily rich investing.
Interesting. So I want to come back to that in 1 second, but that means that you're not that interested in returning to a time period in America or anywhere. You don't have that kind of
nostalgia.
Nostalgia where, in the movie Midnight in Paris, they talk about it where it's like you always have this idea that, I believe that the 1920s were like the time I would, the Great Gatsby and the Roaring '20s and the partying and the coming out of World War I, but before the Great Depression, like that was to me the golden age of happiness and prosperity and frolicking and good stuff. But then people in the 1920s, if you were to go back to that period, would want to go back to like whatever, the 1840s or something and say like the Gilded Age. I don't know when it was.
So dude, I'm very against that. I'm very against that principle because I know people who are like that and they're just always fucking miserable. And also like I'm Italian. And again, I know you hate this when I say Italians do this and that, but I
hate Italians.
Italians, in my opinion, are particularly nostalgic and they always think that like before was better. And I think that's just such a sad way to live life because you're making the new memories that you're going to later think were the good times when in reality you were not enjoying them. I make a very, very big effort to enjoy the present.
That's a really healthy attitude. And I think that that's really good. Having said that, there are times where today is worse than not too long ago.
So is that your answer? Your answer is you would go back in time to relive the good times?
Not necessarily. And I think the original question was more about like, where do you think the information would benefit you more? Because, and this is the other part of it. It's a kind of a layered question because if you go back in time, you're only really benefiting from the information that you have about the present if you stay in that time.
Right. You have to stay in that time, which I think is a snooze.
Yeah.
You're right. You could go back and invest in Bitcoin or
well, it's like in Hot Tub Time Machine when he makes Lugal.
I don't remember that.
Oh, one of the guys, they go back in time to the 1980s, and then one of the guys stays and then like joins them again in the present, having lived the 35 years up till then, and he preemptively, made Google, but in his own name, and then became like a billionaire, which is such horseshit because do you have the skill set to code Google?
Right. Of course not. Or to even facilitate that.
Like, can you come up with that idea? No.
Yeah. You're not Larry Page.
So that makes me wonder, right? How would you be financially successful? How well could you do if you went back in time and you couldn't bring any, it's not like you have a smartphone with you where you can look up the results of game 6 of the NBA finals and then fucking bet on the spread of that game. Right. So you have to remember
Right.
A lot. And based
Correct.
on your memory, how successful could you be?
Right. And I would argue that there's some just obvious things, you know what I mean? Companies that became huge when no one knew they would before, you know what I mean? You just go back and you buy a bunch of whatever when they launched their IPO, even Tesla, you know what I mean? Like Tesla's
Right.
like $2,000 a share now. I don't know. I think that there's like simple little personal investments you could make that you could become rich. You might have become like, I don't know. You don't have to become.
You're right. You could make a lot of money doing that, but that is a slow burn.
Yeah.
That's a long period of time where you have to watch,
Totally.
I mean, decades where you watch these companies grow and grow and grow and you become this brilliant investor, whatever. What if you only had 2 weeks to hang out in 1985?
Oh, so if I'm going back into the past and I can go for 2 weeks and try to make my mark.
Yeah, and you can't prep, let's say.
Right. So do I have anything? Do I have money? Do I have anything at all?
Yeah, let's say that you got 10 grand in your pocket.
Okay.
How would you do it? What would you do?
You're right. Because if you go back to 1985 and you invest in Apple, you're not going to get that big payday until the turn of the century, 20,
right.
15 years later.
We'll give you a year. And also you can go to any point you want, but you cannot prep. It's like you're on a game show, you know?
Wow, that's hard. That's a really good one.
What information do you have in your head right now where you could go back to a certain period of time and then use that to immediately profit?
Well, I guess it could be, betting on some crazy long shot sporting event, but that seems like it's risky.
Right.
Still, you know what I mean? Like that's the only thing that I can think of where you could immediately like make a ton of money overnight. What, like if you can't prepare at all, the only thing I can think is like I said before, like the long game of investing in a couple of things that you know are going to become huge. But again, in 15 years. So I don't know. I don't know how I would get rich right away. Do you have a thought on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, another thought would be to find a way to buy credit default swaps in 2008 and short the housing market.
Right. But again,
the only reason I know about that is from watching The Big Short multiple times on airplanes.
Right. And to be honest, I don't even know if, like, can you even do that? Can you short the market 30 years later? Or 25 years later, whatever? Like,
well, I think that those credit default swaps, I think that those became very valuable very quickly. I think that the fall of the housing market was so precipitous that overnight those, basically betting against the market.
Okay, but I was thinking about 1985. So you're saying you could go back to 2008 if you want.
Go back to 2008.
Okay, gotcha. August 2008. Yeah, that's pretty smart.
That's one way to do it. The sports one is also pretty good. I think that's like in our field.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could go back to any disaster and short the market the day before it happened.
Right.
You could do it before 1987 crash. You could do it before 9/11. I mean, like, it seems really slimy of a thing to do, but if it's going to happen anyway, I guess,
Yeah, I'm trying to think about natural disasters. Like if you somehow had some resource or you could buy a bunch of a resource that was desperately needed in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, or if somehow, and this is really fucked up, but if you could somehow find a way to profit from 9/11.
Right. And dude, I mean, the market tanked really hard after 9/11.
I know.
So, and dude, yeah, I mean, this is, or you could have even bet on Trump to become president. I mean, that wouldn't have been like a crazy huge payday. He's a big dog.
That is to me the most easy one to do.
Yeah.
Because I know the presidents back to like 1950 pretty well. Mm-hmm. And if there were a Vegas book or some kind of like line for presidential candidates, you could really lever up bets on who was going to win those elections.
Definitely. Yeah, that's crazy. Let me ask you a question about presidents, because I feel like I'm pretty good at them too. But I find that like before 1900, between basically like 1900 to like whenever Andrew Jackson was president, like I have trouble with that whole
Oh
period.
yeah, all the James K. Polk,
Right. Millard Fillmore.
Yeah, and I may be even wrong in saying some of those, but all those guys, yeah, that there are only paintings of and not photographs of. That's when it gets really hard. Yeah,
It gets hard, right? Like I feel like Jeopardy, like the Jeopardy level people like know that, and below that, even if you know a lot, which I feel like you definitely do, it's hard to like to grasp specifically where people were before that or who was president when.
yeah. The first 5 or 6 are not too bad, and then it sort of really does become tough.
It becomes tricky. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a fascinating one. Oh, but you had said something in response to this that was very interesting to me, which was that you would want to go into the future and then bring that information back.
Yeah.
And you'd bring it back to the present. And I think that's right, because you would still want to live in our time.
Right.
But then the problem is that you know what's coming, right? Would you have the discipline? Would you have the discipline to keep blinders on and only look at certain things that would help you make money and then come back?
That's a good call, man, because then all of a sudden you like fast forward to the future and you're like looking around in nuclear winter and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And you don't know how I got there.
Or you bring a whole bunch of information back, and depending on how far forward you went, life is boring for you for 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what, dude, this is what I would do. I would literally go 6 months into the future and look at the best performing stocks that were like random, like the cheap stocks that like people try to figure out what they're going to be and see what went up like 500% in 6 months and bet and put all my money there and then go back to the present.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. I mean, you could also just go to the end of the NBA playoffs this season and then really lever up on some of those games.
If you like that video, check out our channel where we have way more videos. Fucking, I just don't know how to do this. This is unbelievable. If you like that video, we have way more videos on our channel. Please like and subscribe. Turn on notifications if you want to know when there are new ones. But if not, check them out, and we appreciate it.
Oops.